What's up, Super Fam? Welcome back to the channel. That's Supernick here, and welcome to another video. And this is the first video in a new series that I will be doing on my channel. And that series, as I teased in the previous video that I released, will be a series of me sort of reviewing and giving my thoughts on the series WandaVision, released by Marvel Studios, and I will be doing that with each single episode. Now, I'm sure a lot of you Marvel fans and superhero fans have been craving some content over the last year, just as I have, and it's been such a long time without anything that I was just so happy to get this new content. And I actually went and binge watched the first 2 episodes of WandaVision, which dropped on the same night. So this video I will be discussing episode 1, and then I will be releasing another video very shortly after this discussing episode 2, so you can look forward to that. And then I aim to release a new video for each episode every week, so the episodes drop on a Friday, I believe, so I will then release a new video on that the next week. So just to give you an idea of how I will break down this discussion and this video, so I'll start off by giving my initial thoughts on the episode and what I thought of it, and then I will sort of cover what the story in the episode was, and then go into a few interesting details that I noticed, maybe some Easter eggs and bits of the plot line that really stood out to me, and then I will give a wrap-up thought. And then if you hang around to the end, I will be doing a special little shout out at the end, so keep watching till the end of the video. So as I'm sure many of you would have heard from Kevin Feige and people talking about upcoming Marvel content, WandaVision was supposed to be something very different, something wacky, something weird, and I think it's just that. And yes, it's different, but I love the kind of different it is. Like, I have never seen anything like this within the superhero genre, and let me sort of expand on that a little bit. So, to give you an idea, without going into spoilers yet, the first episode is a bit of a spoof on the Dick Van Dyke Show, which was a 50s sitcom. And one of the ways they did this was they changed the aspect ratio. So it's a 4:3 aspect ratio for the majority of the episode. And of course it is done in black and white. And there are a few different and other elements that make it sort of a spoof on this 50s sitcom show that I will go into shortly. So just before I go any further, I will now issue a spoiler warning, because I will start to talk spoilers and go into the story and some little things that were within the episode that I noticed and found interesting. So if you have not watched episode 1 of WandaVision yet, I would pause this video now and go and watch the episode when you can, and then come back and watch the rest of this video. If you've already seen the first episode of WandaVision, keep watching. So first, I will, I guess, go over a little bit what the story in this first episode is. So Elizabeth Olsen returns as Wanda Maximoff, and Paul Bettany returns as the Vision. And they have just recently gotten married, and they're moving to a new neighborhood to start a new life together. And they come into the neighborhood, and they're very shortly introduced to a neighbor played by Catherine Hahn called Agnes, who has some interactions with Wanda throughout the episode, and Vision has a job that he works where we are introduced to his boss, Mr. Hart, and later on in the episode, Mrs. Hart. So now I'll go into, I guess, a couple of cool things that I picked up within the episode, and I've actually written out a whole two pages of notes, so I will be referring to these because I was actually surprised how much I was actually able to pick up during the episode. So I will be referring to these, but don't worry, I won't forget you guys are there. So a few things in terms of the 50s sitcom vibe, I guess. Now, I haven't really watched a lot of these, so it was quite new for me. Like I mentioned earlier that it was spoofing the 50s sitcom show, The Dick Van Dyke Show. Now, I have never watched that show myself, but I found that out through a bit of research, and it's really not something of my time, so it was quite different to watch, but I did pick up on a few things, a couple I've already mentioned, that really sort of gave it that 50s sitcom vibe, which included, as I've already mentioned, the 4:3 ratio, that it was in black and white, and also I found the titles that they used, so character titles or, you know, introduction, show name titles, the way that they did the font and the placement on the screen really gave that that old 50s sitcom vibe to me when I was watching it. The theme song at the start was very like jazzy and boppy, and it was very happy-go-lucky. And throughout the whole episode, even in the background music, because watching it I think it was the second time through, I was starting to listen to like what was in the background music-wise, and I found it very interesting that there didn't really seem to be much of a break with the music. So it was sort of constantly in the background and really supported what was going on in the scene at the time. So whether it was an emotion or something happened, whatever it was, the music in the background really supported this and lifted it up to, I guess, exaggerate the action or whatever was happening in the scene. And speaking of exaggeration, I really found that alongside the live audience effect that they had, as well as, you know, really pushing like punchlines that their characters said to have the live audience react to that, I found that their speech, or like the way that they said things, or the way in which they delivered certain lines was quite exaggerated and calculated. And making an assumption here, I'm guessing that that's sort of, you know, in 50s sitcom TV shows, I'm just guessing that that's sort of how they really, you know, got a point across, or, you know, made a point that this was exaggerated or this was what they were trying to say in the show. So it was definitely a bit of comedic wordplay or comedic effect, I should say, the way that, you know, the characters talked and interacted and their way of speaking. So I found that really funny and really interesting to witness. Something I really, really loved in this episode and in the show so far has been the interactions between the characters. And of course, for those of you who have previously seen Wanda and Vision in MCU content or Marvel Cinematic Universe, they really have a great chemistry going between the two characters. And I really felt that, if not more so, really follow through into this show, and it was just such a joy to watch them interact and be together as their characters again. So that was really fun to watch, and a couple of other character relationships or connections that I really loved in this show was Catherine Hahn's Agnes and Wanda. So Agnes and Wanda did spend a fair amount of time together in this episode, and I found that their chemistry and interactions were really good as well as Vision and Mr. Hart, who is Vision's boss. And I thought that that was sort of almost like a contrasting comedic relationship and interactions that they had. So just seeing the way that the different characters interacted and their different personalities was really fun to watch for me. So in terms of, I guess, a few little maybe Easter eggs or, cool moments in this episode that I picked up on, which I will go into now. So this is definitely big spoiler territory, potentially for the show going forward, but obviously also for this episode as well. So there was, I think about in the middle of the episode, I guess you call it an infomercial. I don't know if this is a big thing on TV in the 50s or in sitcoms or whatever, but there was sort of an infomercial style thing where there was a presenter and a model presenting a new fancy toaster, and this was made by Stark Industries, which to me, I know that Stark Industries is obviously Mr. Stark, who plays Iron Man, so I picked up on that and really appreciated that reference that they put in there. Another one that they sort of made, it was more low-key, but I picked up on this because, yes, I'm a bit of a fan of all the Marvel movies and TV shows and whatnot, was that a few different times they made reference to Sokovia. So, for example, when Mr. and Mrs. Hart came over to the WandaVision residence, Vision sort of said that the way Wanda was acting, which to the Harts was strange, he said that she was European and it was her Sokovian hospitality. And to give you guys a bit of background, in Marvel's Age of Ultron, that's when we first really see Wanda Maximoff and Vision, and most of that film takes place in Sokovia. So I felt that that was a little bit of a callback to that movie, which I really appreciated. Now I wanted to explore in a bit more detail a certain part of this episode, which is where Mr. and Mrs. Hart come over to the WandaVision residence for dinner. And initially, I guess in the 50s and around that era, dinner parties were a bit of a thing where, the wife at the time would be the stereotypical housewife, and she would be home doing the homely duties, and the man of the house would be out working, and to impress his boss, he would have his boss and his wife over to impress them by putting on a good house party. And I think they were very clever with this scene in the way that they used humor and timing and tension. So I just wanted to go over a few things that I thought worked quite well in this scenes or part of the episode specifically. So firstly, when Wanda is in the kitchen trying to prepare dinner with her magical powers, I found that they used comedy from her misunderstanding of, how to prepare the meal and her mistakes in trying to prepare the meal as well. So I found that, I don't know if that's just like a sitcom thing in the 50s, and that was something that was regularly used as a comic or comedic point, but I found that that was quite a comedic part of that scene. It was also interesting that when Agnes was coming to, give Wanda the ingredients for dinner and she came through the back door, she made a point of making a housewife joke, something along the lines of like, oh, you know, what sort of housewife would I be if I didn't have a ready-to-make 4-course meal sort of thing. So it sort of, I guess, solidifies that, you know, stereotype of a housewife's role in the 50s and what she was good for, which completely different in the current day, obviously. It was sort of an interesting commentary on the times and the role of different genders and all of that. So that was another interesting point that I took from that. Another one was when Wanda had finally gotten the meal ready, but Mr. and Mrs. Hart, Mr. Hart specifically, was getting quite agitated and impatient, and there was very much a feeling of chaos there. But then it cut over to the table where Wanda is using her magic powers to set a very prim and proper and orderly table, and you know, you sort of saw the cutlery being laid out very nice, the napkins being sort of, you know, rolled up with a sleeve thing over them, and so that was order, whilst over here was chaos. So I really liked that sort of balance and contrast, not balance, I should say contrast, of order and chaos in that part of the scene. And at the end of that scene, Mr. Hart ends up choking on, I guess, a bit of food. And the way that they use sound and timing here specifically, I found very interesting, because the noise of the ticking clock was very much elevated, so you could hear a very prominent tick, 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 tick in that moment, and the camera work was cutting to, you know, to Wanda looking worried, and then Mrs. Hart and Mr. Hart choking, and Vision, and it was sort of doing very, like, quick cuts to amplify the tension, and, you know, the noises were getting louder and louder, and it was almost a very alienating and weird scene. I don't know how else to describe it but weird, and it just felt really weird and almost like the Harts were aliens in a sense. Don't know why, but again, just felt like a very weird scene. And then finally Vision uses his powers, which the whole point of them moving to this suburban neighborhood is to try and fit in with normal people, so they don't really want to use their powers. But he uses his powers to get the food out of Mr. Hart's throat, and then that's sort of like the happy ending of that episode, if you like. So now we're sort of at the end of this episode, and this is where, to me, things start to get really interesting, because at the end of it, Wanda and Vision sort of sit on the couch and make a commentary on, you know, how they're not really a normal couple and doing normal couple things. And then it does like a very sort of sitcom-esque ending where there's like a triangle border around them, and it has like the end or something in text written there. And then it zooms out, and you can see that the ending of the show is on like a smaller box TV screen, and it zooms out and you see it in like a control room. So you see this larger picture, and it makes me think, are they like, what is happening with reality here? Like, I want to know, like, is this a different reality that Wanda and Vision are in? Is this in their heads? Are they, you know, is Wanda imagining them in a fantasy world? Because if you know what happens at the end of Infinity War to Vision, you will understand where I'm coming from. So as I was saying, it zooms out, you see like a control room. So that's one thing. So I'm like, interesting. So they're showing it as a, you know, as a TV show on a separate screen. instead of this being the whole world. So is there an outside world? Is there like an external world to the world in which this WandaVision show is taking place? And then I don't yet know if this is an Easter egg. I'm going to assume it is, because of what I will talk about as one thing in the next video, which is for episode 2. But on a screen just to the left of the little screen that has the WandaVision show on it, you see a little logo with like a wreath and a sword sticking up. And the unknown person who is also in that zoomed out shot puts down a notebook with the same sword type logo. And I'm gonna say now that that's gonna be like a recurring Easter egg and a really big thing throughout the show. I don't know for sure, but just because that's already come in twice, and at the end of the episode sort of seeing where that's at and what that kind of is almost setting up, I'm gonna say that that's gonna be quite a big thing. So that was really interesting to see, and I wasn't expecting it at the end of the episode. But overall, I would say that I very much enjoyed the first episode, and I love the show so far. I'm so happy that we're getting Marvel content again, so I'm really ecstatic to be getting back into all of that, and I'm really happy to have watched the first 2 episodes so far, and I'm excited to see where it goes, and then see what else comes in terms of Marvel content. Now, at the start of this video, I did mention that I would be giving a very special shout out, so here it is. And firstly, I just wanted to shout out a very, very cool YouTube channel called Heroes Reforged. Now, Heroes Reforged is set up and completely run by 3 very awesome guys who live in the United States, and they talk all things like pop culture and superheroes and everything sort of in that realm. And those 3 guys are Hlavac, Agustin Rios, and Hector Navarro. And I have been following these 3 guys for so long, and I absolutely love their content, and they themselves have already started to put out some content for WandaVision. Now, firstly, and I will of course put all these links down in the description below. Now, firstly, Hector and Augustine did a little discussion about a very special comic book, which is the Vision by Tom King graphic novel. Now, they did a bit of a discussion around this, and I won't give any spoilers on it, but I will put the link in the description down below, so go check that out, because as part of that discussion, they sort of talk about what could potentially be incorporated into the WandaVision show if they do reference this specific run. Now, the second thing that I wanted to mention is that they have already on their Patreon put out the uncut reaction that they did to episodes 1 and 2 of WandaVision, which I will link in the description below, so you can go to their Patreon if you want to see the full versions. But they have also put the edited versions of those reactions to the first 2 WandaVision episodes on their YouTube channel, so I will link those as well. So thank you so much for joining me for this first episode of WandaVision and my thoughts and discussion on it, and I can't wait to do the next one. So thank you again for joining me. Stay super and stay safe.